which is Hyperdash, bringing the arena FPS genre to VR, all right? This talk will be covering the development story behind Hyperdash and Triangle Factory's vision of bringing the arena FPS genre to virtual reality. They'll talk about how they went from the original prototype to finally launching the game on Steam, Quest, and Viveport, discussing their development roadmap and decisions along the way. All right, so this session is in English, so if you want the translation in Portuguese, just please use this link for the translation here on the channel. Okay, so let's welcome Timothy van Herbegen, CEO of Triangle Factory. How are you, Timothy?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
I'm fine, thank you. So the screen's yours.
Yeah, all right. Cool. So I'm Timothy van Herbegen. I'm the managing director of Triangle Factory. I hope that everyone can see my presentation at the moment. So I'll be talking about Hyperdash and how we had the vision of bringing the arena first-person shooter genre to virtual reality. So to give you a little bit of a background about Triangle Factory, we are an independent game developer based in Belgium. We founded the company in 2010, and currently we have a team size of around 25 people. Our main focus is mostly VR and AR. We've been doing VR and AR since about 2012, both focusing on entertainment and enterprise use cases for VR. But this talk will mostly focus on our recently released game called Hyperdash, which is a fast-paced multiplayer shooter for the Oculus Quest, but also for Steam VR and Viveport. So for those who don't know the game yet, I'll quickly show a short trailer that kind of shows what the game is all about. Oh, sorry. I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry for that. There we go. So Hyperdash is a fast-paced multiplayer shooter. We launched the game in February 25th this year, and I'll be going through how we came from the original idea to launching the game on the Oculus Store this year, and of course on the other platforms, Steam VR and Viveport as well. But first, I'm going to start talking about how we got to the original idea. So in 2018, Facebook actually announced the new Quest going to be released in 2019, and we were very excited about this platform, and we had the idea of creating a game for this, and we saw that in VR at that point, most of the first-person shooters that were available were actually kind of slow-paced shooters, more in the sense of games like Onward and Pavlov that kind of took that Counter-Strike feel of games, and we kind of wanted to create a game that was much more fast-paced. The founders of the company at Triangle Factory are all around their 30s and 35 years old, And we grew up with games like Quake 3, Unreal Tournament, Team Fortress, and those games were really a big inspiration for us. And we kind of felt that there was a gap in the market for these kind of games, and that there wasn't really a game yet in VR that actually brought this kind of nostalgic, fast-paced shooting game actually in VR. So we kind of took that inspiration, and we set out the plan of building this kind of game for virtual reality. So we kind of set up some requirements that we wanted for the game, and we wanted the game, first of all, to be fast-paced, easy to learn, hard to master, which of course is important for probably almost every game. But the game also needed to work in-home, in small spaces. We wanted to build a game that was suitable for in-home entertainment, and we wanted to make sure that the game didn't give a big advantage to players who had big spaces towards players who had small spaces. Then we also wanted the game to support multiple game modes. The core mechanics should be easy to learn and easy to pick up, but we wanted to make sure that we could play around with all of the game's settings and basically the game mechanics to set up a lot of different game modes and to create variation in the game. We also wanted the game to be working with one-handed weapons. We saw that a lot of games were using two-handed weapons, but we kind of felt that it was kind of not working always as nicely as we wanted. And we felt that we wanted to make full use of the one-handed controllers that are available for Quest. We also wanted to make sure that the game wasn't creating any motion sickness, and we wanted to make sure that it was running very smoothly on Quest and hitting those 72 frames per second on mobile VR. So the first idea that came up was the concept of triple dash. We kind of worked out a game where the teleportation mechanic that you see a lot in VR games was actually a core mechanic in the game. We felt that there was always this big discussion about teleportation, that it kind of removes the immersion and that it kind of destroys the immersion of a VR game. But we felt like, why don't we just turn this around and make the game, make this gameplay mechanic of teleportation into an actual important mechanic of our gameplay. So we created the idea of triple dash, where you had 3 dashes or 3 kinds of teleports that you were able to use to move around into a level, and that it was kind of a strategic way of moving around. You kind of had to wait and use those dashes strategically. You basically left behind a trail behind you showing where you were going, and you kind of had to make sure that you were using these dashes very strategically, because you were kind of limited in the amount of dashes that you had. So that was the original concept behind it. And so eventually we went from this concept to building an actual prototype, where the first goals of this prototype was building the basic networking for the game, building the basic movement, having the basic weapon mechanics in there, and focusing on one game mode, making sure that we have a fun game. I think that's the most important thing when you build a prototype, is that you actually build something that is fun to play. So we eventually ended up with the first prototype where we didn't focus on any artwork at all, and where we made sure that we were able to actually build something that was fun to play. The first prototype looked awful because, of course, art wasn't our priority. It was mostly about making fun game mechanics and making sure that we have something in our hands that was really, really nice to play. So eventually we had a really interesting prototype. We thought it was a very fun concept, and we pitched the game to Oculus for the first time. I think this was back in the end of 2018, early 2019. But the game actually got denied for the Oculus Quest, and so we kind of were a bit disappointed. Of course, being denied was kind of a bummer for us, but we didn't really give up on this. I think the only disadvantage was that we didn't really know why it was denied, but we felt like maybe we didn't bring across the ID very well, and we felt that there was more to the game, and that we maybe didn't bring across that towards Oculus, and that they didn't really see the potential of the ID that we had. So we said, like, we don't want to give up on this, and we kind of want to move forward and make sure that we maybe bring this ID across in a better way by moving from the prototype to actually building a vertical slice. I think that was very important for us because that gave us a way of actually moving towards showing the actual art style that we had in mind, making sure that we kind of were able to bring across that vision that we had in a better way. And a vertical slice is really a good way of doing that. We started working out the levels that were in the game. We started designing the robots that we actually wanted in there. And so we started the whole design process focusing on actually one game mode, one game mode that you can play online, and making sure that we have a build that was showing the full potential of the game, including the art style, the setting, and the core game mechanics that were in there. So here you can see some of the artwork that we worked out. This was kind of the first level that we had. We had a control mode gameplay. We had a control mode. That was our first game mode that we worked out for the vertical slice. We were also working on the ideas for the weapons, the one-handed weapons. We wanted all kinds of weapons in there, rocket launchers, SMGs, but we also wanted to make sure that they all felt right and that they all were working as a one-handed weapon. And then we also designed the final character for the game that's actually even now still is the actual character in game. And then we actually ended up with a vertical slice that we kind of worked out into an announcement trailer for the game as well. And I'll show that announcement trailer right now so you can kind of get an idea what the vertical slice was all about.
Welcome to Hyperdash. Prepare to start.
So back then, we still had the idea of launching the game in 2020, which eventually was maybe a bit too optimistic. But around that same time, we also went to Gamescom while we were working on that vertical slice. And it kind of shows the importance of networking and making sure that you meet new people. And at Gamescom, basically, we went to a bar, had some beers with some friends of ours and some colleagues in the industry. And there we actually met someone who just started working for Oculus, which was kind of very interesting because we were able to pitch our idea to this person, and she immediately thought it was very interesting. She saw the potential of the game, and it gave us really a nice opportunity and to lay the foundations of a good relationship with Oculus. So it really shows that it's important to attend these kinds of events and meet the right people. So back then, we around that same time, we did our second pitch towards Oculus, and we actually didn't hear back from them. So we didn't really got denied. We also didn't got approved, but we kind of saw it as a positive thing that we really didn't get denied because we felt like, okay, they're not really denying it. We didn't get approved either, but at least we kind of feel that they're probably still evaluating the idea and there might be something in there. So we also wanted to have a lot of feedback from the community. And when we did the announcement trailer, we kind of also released our first alpha. We wanted to make sure that we had started building a community. We did this through some major channels like Discord, Reddit. We had some exposure from Upload VR. We, of course, put our trailer on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. I think the most important ones for us were Discord and Reddit. And the game actually really took off. The trailer got picked up, and the alpha was actually being picked up by a lot of people. Our Discord was filling up with people who wanted to play the alpha version, which was really interesting for us because we were able to test out the game, getting feedback from the community, and also making sure that we were constantly working out the bugs and getting new features in there and getting feedback on these new features that the community really liked. So by then, I think around the April 2020, we did a third pitch to Oculus. And that time we really already had a lot of players in there. We also showed Oculus that the alpha was actually doing pretty nicely. We actually put some statistics in there, some analytics about the game. We had around 6,000 users playing the game actively in the alpha version. And we saw that people were really enjoying the game. People were playing the game more than once daily. They were spending around 14 minutes in the game per active users on a daily basis. And the retention for a VR game was actually showing pretty good results, and it was actually showing that it was pretty promising. And I think that definitely helped us with getting approved. And so we finally got our approval from Oculus, which was great. We kind of celebrated that, and we kind of kept developing through the alpha, launching a new version of our alpha each month. So we also asked Oculus if we could launch the game on SideQuest. We saw that SideQuest was actually becoming quite a big platform, and that it was a very interesting platform for us to get the game out there to a lot more people. So we asked them if it was any problem, because in the beginning we were kind of skeptic if we should do this, because of the fact that we weren't sure if the relationship between SideQuest or Oculus was on a positive note, and that it was a good thing. We were kind of scared that it might not be a good thing to launch on SideQuest when we were planning to release the game on Oculus in the end. But Oculus actually had a really good relationship with SideQuest, and they saw it as a really positive thing to test out the game and get more people into the game. We launched the game on SideQuest, and then it really took off. We got a lot of people. I think we got around 150,000 downloads on SideQuest. So our community really grew. And during the alphas, we actually started working on the art style a lot. Here you can see some of the concept art that we worked out for the game, we kind of build out our first, basically we build out our levels in blockouts, making sure that the design of the levels was really good and that the gameplay was our main priority. And then eventually we went from those concepts and applied that art style to the blockouts. Here you can also see some of the weapons that we iterated on and try to improve over time across every new release. We tried some new things, we added some new weapons, etc. And then, of course, we also tried to get a soundtrack for the game, which was really interesting because actually a lot of people were very interested in working together with us. Actually, a lot of people from the community wanted to create and help us with the soundtrack. That soundtrack is actually now available on Spotify, so you can actually listen to that soundtrack right now, which is really fun to see. And then, of course, we also saw that the community was growing a lot, and a lot of people were actually taking the game very seriously. We ended up having the community starting a Dash League, which is still right now a league between a lot of teams playing for actual prize money. Actually, we are right now funding the second season, the third season and the fourth season with actual prize money that you can win. So there's really a lot of competitive esports going on around the game. And we also created some features for these people so that they can have spectators and that they have tools to actually stream the game to YouTube and Twitch. And then eventually this year, on the 25th of February, we launched the game on Oculus. Right now, it's still one of the top-selling games on Quest. It is cross-platform, so it's available on Oculus, on Steam, and on Viveport. The community is still growing, and we right now have around 11,000 members in our Discord. The rating is really good for our game. We have a 4.7 rating on 5, and we sold around 45,000 units in the first 2 months after the launch. So after launch, we also had an update, 2 updates already. We kind of kept that same cycle of pushing out an update each month with new features to keep the core players interested and to keep the players who've been playing the game for a long time actually interested in the game and that they have something new to play each month. So the first month we launched the custom games update, which is an update where we allowed people to make their own private servers. And then the last update that we recently launched actually added 2 new game modes to the game, which is a capture the flag update where you can play a capture the flag game mode and also a elimination game mode. So what are the key takeaways of this session? I think, first of all, that you need to test, prototype, and reiterate your game constantly and really listen to the feedback of your community. We kind of kept that cycle of building a new update each month. Get the word out as quickly as possible, and if you're building a multiplayer game, try to test it during an alpha phase. Definitely listen to your community. Like there's always some interesting features coming up. If a lot of people start mentioning something, listen to them and try to implement those features towards your community. Launch the game on SideQuest because it's a really interesting way to see if there's a market for it and if there's actually an interest in your game. And then also make sure that your game is fun before you start spending time on graphics and on artwork. And then also make sure that you go to events and that you attend events because networking definitely helps building up a good relationship with platform holders or with publishers. That's it. And if you guys have any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
That's great, Timothy. Thank you so much. We have one question from our chat, so let's go. Considering being a VR game and frantic, how did they handle the movements so as not to make them sick?
Yeah, that's definitely the reason why we chose to use the dash mechanic in the game. So the dash mechanic is a teleportation system where you've kind of don't have to move physically. So the game is built around this whole dash mechanic, and we also have put in a rail mechanic where you can actually move around with rails, and that movement is actually very constant. So we kind of made sure that you can actually play the game without having to move a lot with your joystick. I mean, we do allow people to move around with a joystick and to actually sprint very shortly using the controllers, but we built the game in that way that you actually don't need to be competitive, and you actually don't need to use that movement. You can actually be quite competitive in the game without actually having to move using the controllers.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. Thank you again for your time and your whole presentation.
Thank you.
Big Festival 2021, the biggest games festival in Latin America.